Call meeting to order. Rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Wanderjum,
Here.
Taiwan,
Here.
Buck, here, Gardine,
Here.
Palmer, here, Kahan,
Here.
Fun.
Please note, as a courtesy to members of the audience and the Board of Education, please silence your cell phone. Public will only be able to speak during public comment is signed up. You have your public comment forms. Please submit them to Dr. Merkel, and he will bring those up to me right now. Have everybody? All right. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
Support.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Carries. Consent action, excuse me, consent action agenda. Can I get an approval?
So moved. Support.
All in favor?
Yes.
All right. All opposed? All right, that carries. Board action. Today, under regular action agenda, it is the recommendation of the Board of Education to approve, oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Gotta flip my pages quicker. Flip pages. Operating taxi. What is the recommendation of Board of Education? Approve the purchase of a Christie Griffin 4K32 RGB 4K projector at a total purchase price of $98,237. The total purchase price includes the projector, necessary long throw lens, and shipping. The price also includes the $1,000 allowance for electrical work needed as part of the installation. Make a motion.
So support.
Sure, and Walt is here, and I'll turn things over to Walt, and he'll tell you a little more about this projector.
So this is the replacement of the main projector in the high school auditorium. The original or the current projector was installed in March of 2014. It's been good, but I don't know, the last time that we had a board meeting at the high school, it was a little bit dim, it was kind of blurry and hard to read. So we kind of investigated it a little bit more. And I worked with Brian Sherwood, the high school auditorium manager. We went through some different options. So this would replace that projector with a state-of-the-art, moving from a 1080p or HD resolution projector to a 4K resolution projector. And would also about triple the brightness of the projector. So I don't know, the screen in that high school auditorium is like 30 feet wide. So it's quite large. So this would obviously provide a much sharper, brighter picture for that. I wasn't sure, Brian. I don't think that.
You guys have any questions about the necessity of the technology with it?
Question I have,
Yeah.
so with regard to current format, so when someone's setting up their presentations, their slideshows, are they still going to set it up for the same format, or is there a specific recommendation is going to be available to them for that?
Every device that the students and staff use will be able to hook into this without any change to format.
Okay.
I've noticed that some of the staff members are slowly starting to grasp the concept that they can set their presentations to widescreen rather than standard. So standard obviously being the 4:3 ratio. But now with the widescreen from more on the image, that was why initially we pushed for a 30-foot screen, or 30-foot diagonal widescreen to accommodate that widescreen that staff and students now have ability.
How long does something like that last?
So,
Oh, go ahead.
so yeah, I definitely looked into that because obviously this projector is moving from a traditional bulb in the projector to a laser light source. And so that's something that's more kind of permanently built into the projector. So you want to know how long is that really going to last? So the laser light source in this projector would last 25,000 hours, which would essentially mean if the projector was on 8 hours a day, 365 days a year, the bulb or the laser light source would last almost 10 years. So obviously the projector's not on 8 hours a day, 365 days a year. So we should expect at least 10 years out of the light source, probably more than that.
Is there any residual value to the current projector?
That's a good question, actually. I'm afraid I don't have the answer to that, but we can definitely look into it. We might look at the possibility of deploying the current projector in maybe one of the smaller spaces in the high school. I know another space that I've kind of looked at upgrading their projector solution is the band room. They have a kind of large space, and that projector's been looking a little dim, and it's been there for quite a while. So we might look at do some swapping around.
Because operationally, it's still fine, right? I mean, other
Correct.
than the need for the space and usability and readability.
Yep.
Got it.
So
Thanks.
I was wondering too, so oftentimes when you have your musical productions, they'll have the big backspace filled with some kind of image, right? So will we still be able to, like, is that going to be even more effective on that backspace?
It's not just musical productions, actually, we can use it for all.
Everything.
Concerts. What's nice is that size of a lens. So you've got the 30-foot diagonal screen, which is about halfway up the stage. If we pull that up and use the band acoustical shell with the upper surface, which we had before, it gets way bigger. And therefore, because it's further away, having a much clearer image, you can even project on that.
That's great.
It can be used for pretty much like.
You could even use it probably as backdrop stuff for plays.
We already have.
Yeah.
That is actually, this would be more beneficial, being brighter and more clear, because of it being further away than almost to the back of the stage.
I just wonder if the feature will encourage people to use our auditorium more because of the
They
technology.
already like it.
You're busy.
Keep him putting his, yeah.
We do. A lot of programs of our own.
Okay, yes.
Is this item in stock, or is there a long lead time for them?
So I'm not sure on the exact lead time yet. Obviously, we want to get the order in anticipation that we maybe we'll get it in this summer. But you know, with technology and the way lead times look right now.
That was my question, just supply chain issue with it readily available versus.
Yeah, and actually, we did look into several other options. For example, the current projector in the high school auditorium is Epson brand. So I know Brian was like, well, it's worked fairly well. Let's look at an Epson brand projector. And Epson has just said, I'm not manufacturing any 4K auditorium grade projectors right now. They're just like, we're just not manufacturing anything like that.
Well, piggyback on that,
Sure.
the brand that we're proposing here, Christie, was my initial request back when we first got the screen and projector units. When you buy them both at the same time, it's a little costly. It's just the projector unit, you don't have to replace the screen. So Christie is my brand.
Okay.
That's great. I think the increase in lumens will be a big improvement.
30,000.
Yeah.
This one right here is probably 4,000.
Yeah, exactly. Just to give us an idea on a traditional bulb for that existing projector, how much would that replacement cost?
What was it? It's actually a pair of all those.
Yeah.
It takes two.
It was around $1,000, if not more, for the bulb.
And those lasted,
Well, I actually let it go longer than it should have. You could tell when it was starting to dim out, but because of the cost, I tried to put it in there and I remember sitting next to him in the phone booth. But that was just his, I tried to do that. I tried to push stuff as far, but what's nice about using this laser, you know, it goes way longer and I don't have to worry about losing the quality.
question?
Yeah, is there a, like a indicator, you said that your bulb would dim and then you knew it's gonna go. Is there an indicator as to when we're getting to the end of that life on the laser?
There is, yep. I mean, obviously you would monitor the usage hours. That's the thing that you check of. There's a whole screen on the side of the projector that lets you know how many hours the bulb has and whether it's expected to, that laser light source is expected to fail anytime soon. But like I said, we should get well over 10 years out of the laser light source, so.
Anything else? All right, take to a vote. Roll call vote, please.
Hayward,
Yes.
Buck, yes. Jardine,
Yes.
DeHaan,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Wonderjohn,
Yes.
Klein.
Yes. Approved. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
All right, moving on to reports and discussion.
Yes, so we have a benchmark assessment report. Dr. Merkel.
Thank you very much. Over here, presentation for me. 3 years ago, the state of Michigan passed a new requirement for all schools to provide a K-8 benchmark assessment in reading and math, fall and spring. Actually, the law reads you have to give it at least 2 times a year. Obviously, it makes more sense to give it fall to spring. As a new component, they have politely asked that a presentation be given to school boards prior to this meeting in February. This is our report for our fall academic benchmark reporting. And what we want to do today is really just kind of highlight some questions about what do you know in terms of our current COVID impact. We give the NWEA map growth test in math and reading, K-8. We just added kindergarten this year. Typically, we actually started in 2nd grade, we dropped down to 1st grade, we've added kindergarten. We've gone back and forth on middle school, we've layered them back in to give us more consistent long-term growth. So go ahead. So we did this fall, winter, spring, but we wanted to target the fall scores because we don't have consistent winter and spring scores yet following the pandemic break. So I want to highlight a couple of things. First, our fall map growth, this is district-wide, and that percentage is what we would consider at benchmark or at grade level across the district. So K-8, we're at about 63% in both math and reading as registering at grade level. And then we have a breakdown. We always take a look at all of our subgroups, and I didn't include a male and female because there wasn't much of a variance across the district. But it's also important to note when you look at the Pacific Islander group, for example, in math they're 100%, in reading they're 50%. Part of the reason is typically in a statistical analysis we pull them out because there aren't enough in there to equal a subgroup. So 1 or 2 students can really skew the data, but I wanted to include it just to give the big picture because when we pull the data, we look at all of it and we drill down into individuals. Go ahead. The second thing then is to look by grade level. Thank you very much. The difference, complete grade level across the district. Kindergarten math numbers look really good coming in. That's always a wondering because it's a new test, right? And it's a computerized test on the iPad for kindergartners. One of the nice things about the math growth is it includes an automatic trigger for quick guesses. So if somebody's answered questions too quick, the test will let us know that maybe it's an invalid score. And we honestly, we didn't get very many of those, but our teachers are really good about going back. And you can see a couple of trends in there. We see a dip down in 5th grade in that math, in that left column, and we spring back up a little bit until a slight drop in 8th grade. And then in reading, pretty consistent scores across grade levels. If you remember, the district-wide percentage was at 63%, and we're pretty close. And a lot more that we drill down into. The next thing to look at, though, is the overall fall. We didn't have an assessment gap with any of our fall scores. So while we can consider the idea of a summer slide or a summer regression, this will give us consistency across years. And we actually go back to, I think, 2010. I just pulled the 2017 here to see these are the reading trends across those grade levels. And you can go to the next one because I have the same scores up there. But if we want to take a look at them, it's better to take a look at a cohort group. So if you follow those colors down, that will be 1 grade into the next grade. So if you look in fall of 17 in that first column, grade 1, for reading, we started grade 1 at 66.3% in the fall of 18, dropped to 58, and then back up to 61, 66, and then 63 in the fall of 21. And there are lots of reasons why we might see a drop from 66 to 58, grade 1 to grade 2. A lot of foundational skills, a lot of conversations. It's a pivotal year when we're moving into reading fluency past general phonics. And so you can see each cohort as we go. Next slide, please. The biggest, well, sorry, I'm gonna get to the next slide. And then math, the same cohort view. We see grade 1 down to grade 2 in math, not quite the drop. When they get into grade 3 and grade 4, we start to see some differences. Introducing higher level concepts like fractions starting in grade 3, and believe it or not, pre-algebraic thinking starts in grade 3 and 4. But looking at this big picture, the major impact of COVID, next slide, back to reading and math are in that grade 1, 2 combined. So if you look at that reading chart up top and follow that in that circle, grade 1 fall of 20, 70.8%, we dropped down to 54.8%. And then in math, 72.1% down to 61.1%. Now I do have a slight asterisk on some of those fall 20 scores. It was the first year that we ever did remote assessments. And so we had, in the fall of 20, we had about 20% of our students taking these assessments at home. And we did observationally notice some variance that maybe they were really, really comfortable taking that test at home because they scored much better from the previous year. And so we don't discount that assessment, but we also kind of take into consideration some inflation, and that's not just us. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago with curriculum directors across the county, and everybody's talking about the same thing with regard to their data and the COVID data and drawing conclusions that there are some variables. Also, we know that when we're grouping all of our students together, we had a number of students that didn't take the assessments, whether they didn't take it at home or they weren't in school. There were a large number in that fall population that we lost. And so this is a great look, and no doubt that has been some impact. So the big impact on first and second grade in math and reading is a surprise to us. That again are those foundations for math and reading. And it was also for students that were kindergartners the spring of 20 when in March we did, and our teachers did a great job of providing some things, less instruction line for our youngest learners. And so when they came back in first grade, we knew then that we had more to do. So not a surprise. Next slide, please. And then once we draw those conclusions, the biggest thing we want to talk about is what are we going to do about it? And the first thing that our teachers have been laser focused on is just focusing on essential skills and content. We don't have time for fluff. Everything has to be really focused on what is most essential within a grade level content. And then the second thing is maintaining the structure of our MTSS system. So that, most of you know, the MTSS system, the multi-tiered systems of support, it provides consistent ongoing assessment. We benchmark 3 times a year. And then anybody that's below benchmark, we progress monitor every 2 weeks. So when we're giving an intervention, we know after 6 weeks, is that reading intervention working? If it is, great. Then they don't need that intervention. If not, we have to change things up and do differently. Realizing some added instructional support in the form of before and after small group tutoring. And additional small group intervention. We know that we only have so much time during the school day. So for some of our students who are behind, we just need more time. And so buildings are starting to develop before school, after school time in small groups. And some are even saying, Scott, what do I do if this can't get here before or after school? We're trying to do what we can, maybe even in a 15-minute lunchtime study buddy type something just to get added instructional support. And then we've already started planning summer school for this coming summer. We are offering K-12 programming again for summer school. Elementary will be specific remediation, again, essential skills and content. Reading, well, language arts, all language arts will include writing as well, and math. The middle schools have ELA and math labs again, and the high school will be credit recovery. Last year, we offered high school credit recovery. In the past, we charged parents for that, and it's free now. We were able to do that last summer. We're going to carry it, and we were able to recover credit for more students than ever before. So it's a great program. Questions?
You know I'm waiting, right? So can you go back to your chart when you're seeing the regression, please? So
Yeah. Go back, Rick.
I think our community, our parents, obviously our staff would also probably like to know that. Are you going to be doing any anecdotal analysis on the effect of masks and how that changed after the first semester to see if scores rise specifically on younger students?
When you say anecdotal, just
Anecdotal, because I don't know how you're going to measure it, right? And I'm not, for me, it's very important to me.
Okay,
Why, parents have been talking to us for almost a year about the negative effects on masks. So for me,
I just haven't heard of any assessment that would measure that.
I think you could look at it based on specific numbers and if they're going to rise up from a certain perspective, because not all grade level children are masked. I mean, you can maybe mask the results so that, we don't know specific children, but to me, that's very important.
I just don't know how you
In
can
the
measure that.
context of this actual set of data, we would be able to measure that because this was done in the fall. So you're going to have growth from this point to the mid-year. It's not a bad idea.
But you've got spring.
Correct, we've got spring, but the growth rates are going to occur. And traditionally, if you look at NWEA scores, the greatest gains actually come between January and March anyhow. So they'd have to go back and do an extremely deep statistical analysis to not make any slippery slopes along those lines. But it's a good idea. I just don't think this is the measure that we can use with statistically sound information, because this is benchmarked in October, and you're going to see growth into the year one, no matter what. And everything is.
we can also layer in a Gadian statement, which is Dibbles, the
Yes.
old Dibbles that we looked at
Yeah, I
from a
understand
reading
that.
perspective, right? And the teaching of reading skills.
From my perspective, I'm looking for anecdotal. So I'm not looking for, you should be able to determine, come on, you can find anything in data if you look hard enough to find anecdotal data that determines whether or not, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to find mass and negative impact on learning, specifically on grades,
And that's through students telling us that, the anecdotal information you're looking for.
through their testing. Yeah, through their testing scores.
I'll pull some things, either this time next year when we have another fall semester, and we can pull this spring together too, or we can pull right away next fall.
Okay. Yeah. I think you're going to see a bump.
Next fall.
Yeah.
Like, it's
I
not
hope
really
so.
this related, but just back to summer school. We measured the students from beginning to end, to see how successful that was.
From summer school?
Yeah.
Yes, we haven't isolated them yet, but we're working on that right now. We use a data program called IDEX, and we're gonna label all the summer school kids. And then we're gonna be able to do 2 years of a track and see who was involved in summer school for multiple years. And then we can bring it forward, so we're not just isolating on one point.
That was my question too, though, because we had, every student was available, like summer school was available for everyone last summer.
Correct.
So you're gonna have a different level of needs. So often summer school is remediation only, correct?
Mhm.
And so last year, we had kids in there that did not need remediation at all. So if we're gonna measure it from summer school effectiveness on remediation, I don't know if you're gonna include last summer or if you're going to.
We are, yeah, because we want to be able to track it forward without isolating too much on one point of data.
Yeah.
To draw too much conclusion.
It would be very interesting, though, to know if you had students who were not necessarily there for remediation, if that actually brings up some scores too. That might be
Well,
kind of some fascinating data too.
Yeah, and what we can do is we can break out those that are already at benchmark, like we can show growth measures by where they enter. Are they in the
perfect.
bottom 25%? Are they in a middle range or a high level learner? This summer, that's going to scale back a little bit because we are starting with invitations to our students who really need it
Need
the
the
most.
help,
It's
But
going to be more
anybody can take it in the
needs-based.
summer, right?
What's that?
Anybody can go this summer again, though, right?
Depending on space, we hope so, but we're going to we're going to prioritize those that academically need the time the most.
Not like last summer was anybody and everybody. Mhm. Yep.
Oh, go ahead.
So I was gonna ask you, you mentioned obviously you do have students and more that are needing, support. So staffing wise, do we have what we need to provide the support for the numbers of students that will need it?
That's a landline question.
Okay.
Do we ever? Yes, we do, and we have highly trained staff.
Good.
And we have zeroed in on our interventions. Pre-COVID, one of the things that I think gives us a leg up, pre-COVID, we had started some work to, within all of our reading interventions, we brought a committee together to identify all of our reading interventions, make sure everything was uniform and research-based across the district, and we invested on those that we knew were the best, and we leveled that playing field. And so come COVID, we were able to really roll that out even better and more specifically. So yes, we've added some intervention components as well. We added an academic interventionist that's doing some work up at Cummings right now. And we have been even more intentional in training those that are providing interventions.
I have a question that goes along those lines. First, I want to say thank you for breaking it down with us. I appreciate the cohorts. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. It was hard for a colorblind person to do.
Gives you appreciation for universal design for learning. We talk about a lot of the planning around improving the scores through the MDSS process.
Mhm.
Has it been possible to fully implement those intervention groups with the interruptions to staffing due to COVID issue?
No, COVID has impacted all of that. But in groups that I have been involved, people have heard me say that one of the things through COVID that I am most proud of is our commitment to our MTSS process. Through COVID, it would have been very easy for us to pull back and say, we need to put the pause button on that because we're just surviving. And in many days we are, but we have maintained the fidelity, sometimes skeletally, but our groups we were one of the few districts in the county that through COVID were able to, with the exception of the spring of 20, to maintain 3 times benchmark. We benchmarked 3 times. All of our building teams met on those benchmarks to have conversation about who's learning and who's needs extra support. And so the integrity of that system and the maintenance now, have we struggled? Absolutely. Particularly because part of that system, when meetings happen, oftentimes we rely on subs. And so we've had to scale those back at times, and maybe our teams haven't been as big. Just like we're focusing on the essentials within instruction, we're focusing on the essentials there. Let's get the conversation, get the information out to teachers when we have to. So has it been impacted? Yes.
Are we keeping track of the number of missed intervention groups in each building to help understand the positive and negative impacts on scores this year?
Some principals are very much keeping track of that.
Okay. But not all?
No.
Okay. Are we using any of the other NWEA sub-tests that can be used throughout?
Like the screeners?
The screeners, specifically thinking, because the benchmarks can only be done at specific times and specific windows through the year, but if you wanted to test something like what you're talking about, Bob, would those screeners be something that you would use with fidelity and?
Not yet, but the question just came up. As buildings have asked for more information, more diagnostic information, it is one of the tools that's available to us.
Okay.
As you know, it's a balance. When it comes to that additional level of assessment, we want to make sure that they're ready for it because it does take away some other time.
That is so true.
So one, just for further clarification on why I'm asking for this information, Scott. So over the past few weeks, there are daily articles, information on the negative effects the pandemic had, the use of masks on students, whether you're in person or not. So I know in my heart it affected Grandville. That's why I want the anecdotal, want the impact, or how close we can get to it, because it's going to only continue. This will be in the forefront for this entire year. It is my focus, one of my focuses for this year. So you just happen to bring this right one. So
Perfect.
Top of my head.
Well, what I'd like to do is at the end of the year, bring a year-end summary that includes winter, spring as well. And then we always have it in the form of an MTSS update as well, and we can drill down. We'll have some fun conversation about it, because there are going to be so many different impacts. I would caution against saying anything is causal and pinning it down on one thing, because they're going to layer in. But we know it's all had an impact. There's no denying it. And hopefully we can have a really robust and fun and energetic conversation about it when we're on the other side. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point, right? Because, I mentioned in the last meeting, right? My son had 3 teachers out at one time at the middle school, right? So I get where you're going with the mask, right? But I mean, it's gonna be hard to pin it down to this mask, or that teacher and that, we had teachers out for weeks at a time because of COVID exposure, right? So and I think that's where you're probably alluding to. There's so many factors right now. It's gonna be hard to figure out.
But there are some, absolutely. But there are some skills that I think we can target too, because this is so broad, right? We can't draw any conclusions from this, and I wouldn't say aside from watching the drops, right? This provides us more questions than answers, but we can look specifically at those things that speaking is important as we're looking at letter sound correspondence, as we're teaching phonics and sounds like that, and we can really drill down into some very specific things to see.
Bingo, that's it. So when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at K through 7, right? I mean, others already have that skill set. As you get older, you have the skill set.
Yes.
When you don't have the skill set, that's the
absolutely. That's funny. That was one of the conclusions that I started to type up, and I felt like I couldn't explain it well. But there's almost an element of resiliency, right? When you've been in school that long, you have those components. My hypothesis was, when I started putting this together, was that we would see less of a drop in older grades, and sometimes there are some anomalies, but that's exactly why.
How did, like, our overall math reading scores overall for K through 8 was like 63 for both of them roughly. How does that compare to other districts around here, do you know?
I thought post-COVID, I do not know. Typically, we're in the top 25%.
Right.
The challenge with that, I'm gonna put an asterisk on that though, because it depends on what assessment we look at, right? We've talked for years about MSTEP and NEET before that, right? And some of the challenges that came with that. That's typically what we use because we get that publicly. This data is not public. This is an individual benchmark assessment. So right now, we can't compare this assessment with other districts. Our performance on this is typically better.
We're usually between 6 and 9, right, in the county. It depends on the test and the time of year. So
The numbers you're seeing here are nationally norm standard, so it's comparing us against the entire country. When you look at these percentages and putting students in a range of like their zone of proximal development, so we're saying this is how many students are ready to learn in that zone at that time.
What you can do is look at districts who take MAP like we do that have very similar demographics and do a comparison with some of that, and we do well with that.
Thanks for the question.
thanks, Scott.
I will share the specific presentation.
Appreciate that. Thank you much. Next is public comment. Remind everyone that there's public comment, we got 1 minute warning. Mr. Hybar, keep track time from you over here. Also, I remind you that you're speaking to the board, not to the audience. Please keep your comments civil without disruption. I also want to remind you that speakers are asked to express themselves in a civil manner with due respect for the dignity and privacy of others who may be affected by your comments. While it is not our intent to cite the public comment, speakers should be aware that if your statements violate the rights of others under the law of defamation or invasion of privacy, you may be held legally responsible. If you are unsure of the legal ramifications of what you're about to say, we urge you to first consult with your legal advisor. First person up tonight will be Tessa Janza, followed by Brenda Gartenbach.
My name is Tessa Jansma. My address is on file for you guys. How long are we going to do this protocol with the masks, the testing? I feel like this is going to drip into next fall. Although it being election year, we might not have the governor pushing it. but the health department most definitely will. Flu season comes every year in Michigan. It will always, except for last year, we didn't have the flu. So, but every year following, the flu will come back. And we're going on year 3 of this. I would really love to know, when are you going to allow parents back into the schools? You know, we've missed very memorable moments with our children because of COVID. Nothing stops us from getting together outside of school. So none of this makes sense. We can all still go to Craig's Cruisers all together, but parents can't come in for Valentine's Day parties. We get the Christmas program on video now. Like, my hope is that this ends this year, but I'm a realist when it comes to this, and this is going to drag. This will be here next year as well. So we'll take it from there. You know, by now, everyone who somehow still is scared of COVID, they have access to a vaccine. They say the vaccine works, right? So there's access to, you know, ease their mind with parents coming into the school, but parent involvement is essential. These teachers are strained thin as it is. Like pre-COVID, I remembered how important it was for us parents to come in and help and do these class parties and participate. And it was such a load off of the teachers because they already have so much going on. More so these past couple years. When are the schools going to open up for the parents again? That's a big one for me. Let's see. You know, I would suggest that help with the whole split, because we're obviously all still split, would be if we could maybe have an open dialogue conversation. Because I mean, like, do you guys put anything on the website? Or I never hear anything from the majority here. So coming to another meeting, it's like I don't even know where you stand anymore. You know, like, what have we discussed the, you know, the mask thing? I feel like they're gonna try and hold on to that. But yeah, I'll have a young 5 starting next year, so we'll be starting all over. Like, should I go? You know, Bob made a very telling mark with these masks affecting these kids. Like, they're scared. These kids are scared. Like, you're driving fear into them about something that almost literally has no effect on them at all. And it's like raising the next red guard. And I can't not call it out. Like, this whole agenda is evil, and it's got to stop. Like, if you guys don't pay attention, there's you know, court hearings going on in Germany, and crimes against humanity will be coming out. And you talk about being held legally accountable for our statements. Like, I think you guys should look into becoming legally accountable for putting our children through this. I would just, as a, you know, side, just highly suggest looking into that, because it's coming. Like, look it up. It's like the trials have started. So we're in just muddy waters, and we should be able to work together. You know, you guys, these are our children. Like, no politics. These are our children. Thank you.
Follow by himself on this.
Why? Why? I can't imagine what the folks on social media who think they know what's happening at these school board meetings, but they've never been to one, might ask. The folks who refer to parents speaking out as racist nut jobs. Now there's a pin. I'll have to put that on my 80s denim jacket next to my Worst of Humanity and my domestic terrorist, and wear that badge with honor. Why do they keep coming to the meetings? The masks are gone. Thank goodness for election years. Why do they talk about stuff that isn't happening in our schools? Isn't it? If the things we mention aren't really happening here, and that's a big if, we want the school board to make sure that it stays that way. If the things we mention are actually happening here, stop them, make meaningful change. Why do we keep complaining? Grandville schools are really quite conservative. I'm pretty sure a liberal's definition of what's conservative and mine are quite different. Why? Because we don't ever want our children to be put through the hell of the last 2 years ever again. We don't want our small children developmentally delayed because they can't hear their teacher, see their mouth to enunciate words, or just receive a smile of encouragement. We don't want our teens considering, attempting, or committing suicide at unprecedented rates. We don't want bureaucrats deciding what is best for our children when we as the parents are who truly know what's best for our children. We want a school board that will fight for our children and not just rubber stamp the legal documents required by the state while virtue signaling to the masses. We want a school board that will tell Roger to get rid of the CNN 10 propaganda and stop paying Kent ISD for it. We want a school board that will remind the administration that KISD works for us and not the other way around. We want a school board that will demand that we stop sending inappropriate questionnaires to our children. We want a school board that doesn't say, well, it's what all the other schools are doing. I mean, hasn't every parent said to their kid that says, oh, my friends are doing it, replied, if all your friends were jumping off of a cliff, would you do it? You see, it's all, if a faction of parents doesn't want something taught, how hard is it to not teach it? If another faction wants that thing taught, they can teach it themselves at home. We can't unteach things, which is really the goal, to indoctrinate the kids while they're super young, normalize the disordered, and separate children from their parents. This is the end game. We want a school board that will represent all parents in the district and listen to them and respect them, not the behavior we've seen from the majority of the board in the past 10 months. Bullying parents, telling them we can't clap, that will be removed, that we can't read a speech for someone else, and now the little threats of legal ramifications. Talk about bully. I think, Ms. Buff, you should have a little talk with Ms. Klein. All of which those threats were untrue. Read the Open Meetings Act. It's time to step up for our kids or step down from this board. Thank you.
I'll be short. I really have more questions than anything else. My first question is, Mr. Merkel, is your presentation going to be posted anywhere, or is that available for parents or public or not? You can email me. I know we're not supposed to address you for questions, but I'd like to know if that will be available. Second, I want to talk about the basketball game the other night. I really thought that they did a great job. I don't know if any of you were there for the teacher recognition or teacher appreciation night. That was really well done, and some really great teachers were honored that night, and I really enjoyed that. My questions come from a buzz or rumor that I've been hearing around about possibly having virtual as an option again next year. I don't know if that's true, but my questions are, if that is true and virtual learning will be an option, I'd like to know about those teachers. Are they going to be full-time staff? How many students are requesting that this be virtual? So I'd like to know, will a teacher have 3 students, 5 students, 10 students? What will that classroom look like? Is there pay? Is it similar to our other teachers? Will they have to go to a classroom? How are we going to hold those teachers that will be virtual accountable? We've seen that virtual learning, that a lot of those students didn't do so well, fare so well. My questions basically stem around that. If that is true, I'd like to know the numbers and statistics behind that. I want to thank Roger for bringing up the mask learning loss. I really believe that's there. I've subbed in the district enough to know and see the kids fidgeting with the masks, what a distraction they are, not to mention the other health disadvantages that they bring. We talk about learning loss. There's a social learning loss that comes with that. I have a high schooler now who has had no middle school activity nights, events. Homecoming kind of happened. It was outside. Now snow coming's maybe not going to happen. I mean, these kids are losing so many moments and teachable moments on these social skills. My high schooler is like a 7th grader sometimes emotionally because they don't have these developmental milestones happening in the school because of COVID. And I think it's sad, and I think it's harming them. My middle schooler didn't get the Chicago trip. She didn't get the overnight camp. She's never done overnight sleepaway camp. All of those things were missed because of this. And we have to start allowing these activities to happen and start worrying about those losses as well, not just the scoring of tests. So, thank you.
Our next regular meeting of the Grandville Board of Education will be Monday, February 21st, 2022 at 7 p.m. at the Administration Building. Concludes our meeting for tonight. 7:48.